Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Today on the show, I need to tell you guys about the very obvious political operation being run against Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and her UCP government. If you didn't already know, the Alberta government has ordered the school boards around the province to pull explicit and inappropriate materials from school libraries. This is not controversial at all. In fact, most parents in Alberta approve of these actions. But we have the left attempting to make Smith look like a fool by banning way more books on the school board level, pretending that this is exactly what Smith and the education minister, Dimitrios Nicolaides, wanted. It absolutely isn't. What the Alberta government has been pushing for is banning books like Genderqueer. And even then, it's not a book ban. You can still purchase these very strange books in the province if you want. I don't know why you would want to, but you can. You just can't have children having access to them. It would be like saying there is an alcohol ban because children under the age of 18 cannot buy alcohol. There is a driving ban because people who do not have driver's licenses cannot drive. People under the age of 14 cannot drive. Obviously, these are just age restrictions, and the Alberta government rightfully wants age restrictions on extremely sexual materials that don't even have an educational purpose. Genderqueer absolutely fits that category, but what you have now is the Edmonton Board of Education suddenly banning 200 books, saying that, oh, we're just trying to fall in line with what the Premier wants. No, they're not. And I'm going to be debunking this story as we go on. But how about we have Laura Babcock introduce us to what the left's position on this issue is? But before we get to the clip of her, I do just want to quickly mention, hey guys, if you like the show, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are not yet a subscriber, leave a comment on what you think, as well as if you live in the city of Calgary and you actually want a pretty conservative mayor, make sure to vote for Sonia Sharp and get a lawn sign. I have her lawn sign linked in the description of this video below, as well as pinned at the top of the comments. I will be doing polling videos later on the Calgary race, going over the numbers and why specifically Sonia Sharp is the best candidate if you actually want a conservative to win, but that will be for another time. Well, whatever. Take it away, Laura, and be crazy and show us why Danielle Smith's a very bad woman or whatever.
Danielle Smith banning books, including, guess what, The Handmaid's Tale, because, you know, if you don't want people to see the future you want, don't let them read the fucking book about it.
Yeah, so Laura still has never found her lithium. She's just running around the streets, flashing her crazy eyes at people and talking about the end of the world. I do eventually want to just show you later on this video. I'm going to cut around to different clips of Laura Babcock talking. She's like that all the time. I'm also not being fair. I'm not clipping her out of context. That's her own clip of herself. That's what she thought was good. Now I need to bring you guys to a CBC News article because, of course, if the political left is running an op, eventually you will have the mainstream left papers picking up the story and just running with the most surface level details of it in order to embarrass the premier. So we have here the title from the CBC article says Canadian author Margaret Atwood takes another shot at Alberta's book ban with satirical story. List of banned books include The Handmaid's Tale and Brave New World. Now, obviously, those books are not actually going to be banned. Do you know how I know those books are not actually going to be banned in Alberta schools? It's because you can actually use Brave New World as a book in classrooms. In high school, you can use that as a book that the class reads together. I believe The Handmaid's Tale can even be used. And who's even brought that book up? It's a silly left-wing book where they act like the great evil in the world is evangelical Christians who are going to act like Islamists and put women in bags and turn them into simply mothers, and that is it. But, like, you can read it. It's not inappropriate. It's really dumb. But nobody was going after that book. So it says down here, Atwood goes on to say that the duo never dies because who wants to dwell and they lived happily ever after. I'm just reading that part. Basically, she was going on about how stories can only be happy and there can be no sexual content in it and whatnot, and everything must be, giddy and whatnot. I just don't need to read her actual story, but I want to go on to what she actually said about the premier. Atwood says, but while they were doing that Handmaid's Tale, But while they were doing that, The Handmaid's Tale came true, and Premier Danielle Smith found herself with a nice blue dress but no job, she said, referring to the high-ranking wives of commanders in her book who wore blue while the handmaids in red garments were subjected to produce children for elite couples in a totalitarian and theocratic state. The quote, the end from Atwood. But she goes on this whole thing about how Danielle Smith wants The Handmaid's Tale to become true. Yes, Danielle Smith, a famous atheistic like premier, and I don't say that as a shot against her. She's famously like the one MLA who, when she was being sworn in at the legislature, didn't want to swear in on any religious book. This lady is not a big social conservative. She just knows what is appropriate and inappropriate for children. But this article goes on and says, it was the second time Atwood has weighed in on the provincial book ban. The Canadian author took to social media Friday to encourage people to get copies of The Handmaid's Tale before they have public book burnings of it. Well, yeah, she doesn't have a financial interest in encouraging people to buy her book for a fake ban. Quote, don't read it. Your hair will catch on fire, she wrote. And then the article goes on to detail out, and it says, detail out what happened. It says, last week, the Edmonton Public School Board, one of Alberta's largest, announced it was yanking more than 200 books from its schools this year to comply with a July order by Alberta Education Ministry to remove books from school libraries that carry, quote, material containing explicit sexual content by October 1st. The board's list of books it was removing gave the first glimpse of the impact of Alberta's book ban in schools. And this is ridiculous. It just goes on to act as if this is just fully in line with the Alberta book ban. Again, it's age restrictions, and in fact, you can have sexually explicit content written like text content in books that high school students can read. You can have some of that content for more mature readers in schools, but they just don't want to have them they don't want, young middle school kids and elementary age kids to be able to have access to them. That was the point of what the ministry was putting forward. And notice how this isn't happening from like a central Alberta Board of Education, from a southern Alberta rural board. This is happening from the Edmonton Board of Education. Arguably the most woke board of education in the province suddenly got all crazy about the ban and just banned 200 books. And notice how they're basically just banning books that leftists really like. They're not banning books that, people on the right might have read. They're just banning books in order to rile up the left, in order to make a villain out of Danielle Smith. This is what we call in politics the practitioner's veto. You see, actual people who vote on new laws, the premier and even her ministers, they don't literally go home at the end of the day and start piecing together how policies are going to be implemented. They give the general details about how a policy is going to be done, and then you have lower level bureaucrats carry them out. They are the practitioners of policy. And the practitioners of policy on the Board of Education in Edmonton are effectively trying to read into Danielle Smith and the UCP's order to go as harsh as humanly possible on the ban and just ban anything with slight sexual content in order to make Smith look ridiculous, even though her and Minister Nicolaides in their announcement were very clear that this is not meant to ban any book that has sexual content within it. They're not banning Romeo and Juliet. They're not banning Othello or anything like that. Those are still going to be available for kids in certain grade levels. But what you're doing is not having things like genderqueer on the shelves, things that are just depicting sexual activity for no educational purposes whatsoever, in ways that you really shouldn't be showing to not only children, but really anyone. If someone had the book Genderqueer on their shelf in their house, you should probably not want to be around them, because that's very weird. But the thing is, again, the Edmonton School Board is now going to go way over the top and ban everything and then blame it on Danielle Smith, even though no other Board of Education in Alberta has chosen to do this, because they're being run by far more rational actors. But you will have outlets like the CBC and like CTV News and Global City TV will just report it straight out. Oh, this is a consequence of the book ban because they said it was a consequence of the book ban. It's not a consequence of the book ban. It's a consequence of the practitioner's veto. You give an order and they carry it out in an incompetent way in order to embarrass you. That is not real. Now I just want to highlight other people who should know better, because maybe we could say maybe a dull writer at the CBC or Laura Babcock are not actually equipped to understand right and wrong. Well, I do want to call someone out who absolutely should know better, who in fact would present themselves as somebody who is an educator, an expert on policy. We have Dwayne Bratt, who actually taught on my master's program at the University of Calgary for public policy. And he says here, first day of school in Alberta, and what are we seeing? A book ban, a ban on transgender athletes in school sports. You mean biological men in women's sports? Yes, Dwayne, very scary stuff. I can't believe the women will not be beat by biological males anymore. Truly, we are regressive here in Alberta. And then he goes on and finishes, and a specter of a province-wide teacher strike. The province literally gave the teachers, the teachers made an offer from the Alberta Teachers Association. The province was basically like, we agree to pretty much all of that. And now they are striking anyways, because the ATA is an NDP front group. They only act in order to try and push for the interests of the NDP. Like most unions, the leadership of the unions doesn't actually care about their own members. They care about leftism because they are leftists. And so the ATA is being obstinate on purpose in order to actually just effectively hurt the polling numbers of Danielle Smith. Because have you seen the polling numbers? Danielle Smith and the UCP are crushing Naheed Nenshi and the NDP because nobody likes know-it-all Naheed Nenshi, who doesn't actually know squat. And you know he doesn't know squat because he, like Dwayne Bratt, two professors who mostly worked at the Mount Royal University, are presenting this as a book ban. It is, kind of a book ban. It's really just age restrictions. Again, we don't call it an alcohol ban because you can't drink until you're 18. We don't call it a smoking ban because you can't smoke until you're 18. We don't call it a driving ban because you can't drive until you have your learner's license, then your full license when you're 14 and 16. And then you need to be licensed even if you're an adult and haven't taken the test yet. But these guys are dull political hacks who are trying to make Smith look bad by simply just parroting whatever is said about her that's negative. Because they are leftists. They don't actually care about the objective truth. I am somebody who has criticized Danielle Smith on many occasions in the past. I will probably in the future at times. Not because I have a bone to pick with her, but because if I see her do something that I don't agree with, and I think that's out of step with what conservatives should be doing, I'll say something about it. I think she's actually improved a lot over the last year, because last November I actually voted against her in her leadership review because there was a lot of areas of policy I didn't think she was really moving fast enough on. And then after that AGM, within a few months, they actually did start proposing their tax cut. They actually did come out with a surplus budget. Things started getting better. I'm like, okay, I can lend you my support now. In hindsight, if I knew you were going to do this, now I would have voted yes. And by the way, when I voted against her, I knew she was going to pass. My whole thing was I symbolically wanted to show, I don't want to give her 100% approval. I want her to have that margin of no, of saying room for improvement. And she has improved. So hopefully having some people actually out there saying, hey, please move faster, did help them move faster. If they're always planning on doing it, great. But again, I'm not someone who's just here to pump up Danielle Smith's tires. I call balls and strikes. But when people call strikes when no ball has been even thrown, stop listening to them. It almost turns out like they just want to call strikes on the Premier. And now I want to take a little bit of an aside to talk about digital ID in Alberta, because I know this is something that people on the right are currently calling Danielle Smith out for, that they are creating digital ID in Alberta, and why is she betraying us? Guys, I have a record of calling her out on things. I didn't like when she was celebrating high immigration numbers when she first came in. She was very much pushing the TFW programs and wanting to increase Alberta's population, and she came in with sort of seeming like she was going to weaken a lot of her policy stances. She's improved on that stuff, and now I give her credit for it. But people, for some reason, want to find some negative angle of attack on Smith from the right, when in fact she's actually doing a generally good job. They're like, oh, she's betraying the separatists. She was never a separatist. She's betraying a group of people she was never a part of. Oh, she's not letting the petition go ahead fast enough. She should just put the referendum on the ballot next year. Why should she? It's not her job to do that. She's already lowered the threshold for signature so you can get on the ballot. Just because Thomas Lukaszak has tried to basically stall your petition doesn't mean that she now has to step in on your behalf. But this digital ID thing, they're like, oh my goodness, digital ID coming to Alberta. What they mean is you can digitize some of your government records using a government application, because of course it's going to be run by the government for you to be able to get things like birth certificates and driver's licenses and marriage certificates on your, like, basically on an app if you want to be able to save them. That's not digital ID. Digital ID is if that was also connected to your credit card and you needed this ID in order to access different things. That's not what's going on. This is as much as digital ID as you going onto your Apple wallet and scanning your license onto it. This is just a portal so that you can get these things digitized if you want. That is not digital ID. So anyone going around saying that should be discredited, or they're just being kind of a bit of a crank. They just want to find a problem with Danielle Smith, so everything becomes like digital ID. It's not digital ID. It is digitized documents. Digital ID, the sorts of things that you have in communist China, is when every time you purchase something, the government sees what you purchased and where you purchased it, and they can pull your right to purchase it at will. That is not what is going on here. And if you think that the government has to be like artificially low tech and do everything on paper just so there's no digital element to it, you're just wrong. I'm sorry. It's not digital ID for the government to technically be able to get a warrant to be able to get an IP like search on you because you may have violated the law. That is different. That is just normal abilities to go through courts to get access to information. I don't want the government to have automatic access. That would be digital ID, where your Wi-Fi provider must give them a readout on everything that you do online. That would be a violation. That's not what's going on now, and nothing the Alberta government is currently doing would touch that at all. Anyways, now I do want to just end this video off on something funnier, because now I feel like I need to come down the other side of this video and just have fun. So I want to show you what the Laura Babcock show is like, the O show. It is prestigiously crappy. It is. I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to let it play for 30 seconds and prove that, yes, she is like this all the time. And then I'm going to jump around the show and show you that, no, she is 11 out of 10 all of the time. Her eyeballs are physically trying to leave her face at least 15 times in a 40-minute episode.
Let's talk about Danielle Smith. I mean, banning books, gerrymandering. Keith, how far further down the I want to be part of America does the Premier of Alberta have to go? Bonnie Critchley said on the...
What is she talking about? Gerrymandering. There's no gerrymandering in Canada. Sometimes the boundaries of ridings change, but it has to be done on like a mathematical basis that this riding now has too many people. So let's take one neighborhood out that roughly has a good amount of people and add it to another one to basically even them out. You can't just like draw lines around specific homes in order to include them in your district. The idea that she's doing that is just someone like Laura Babcock attempting to Americanize Canadian politics because she doesn't know anything about her own country. So she constantly views her own country through the lens of like far left coverage of the U.S.
show when she was on a couple of weeks ago. And by the way, she'll be an Alberta correspondent for us, I hope. She said, that Danielle Smith is a traitor who's selling out the country, selling out Alberta one piece at a time. I haven't used that language around Danielle Smith, but where are you, Keith, as you're watching this premier undermine, I think, our sovereignty every time she opens her mouth?
It's mesmerizing how, and by the way, the other two people might as well put on blonde wigs because they are just Laura Babcock, who happen to be men in different locations. These people have no thoughts of their own. And even her asking a question, it wasn't a question. She basically just said, did you agree with my insane tirade? And they're like, oh, I did agree with your insane tirade. Let's even show it.
Well, I mean, Premier Smith put out a video this week talking about how so many billions of Alberta tax dollars are going directly to Quebec and electing Liberal politicians that then refuse to help enact policies that help Alberta. This is such a misrepresentation of the equalization program in Canada. I, fortunately or unfortunately, spent about 10 years in a row covering the annual premiers meetings. Almost all of them were focused on equalization during that time. So I got to know quite a bit about this file. And of course, there's always times when it looks unfair to somebody else. But let's be clear right off the bat. Alberta individuals and Alberta businesses pay exactly the same level of taxes as people in the rest of Canada.
No one contends this. Where does this come from, where people act like people who oppose equalization, like the current system, or at least how disproportionate it is? That we don't, nobody thinks that if you make $150,000 in Alberta and you make $150,000 in Ontario or Quebec, that you pay different amounts of taxes to the federal government. Nobody thinks that. The thing that people think, rightfully so, is that because the equalization system is trying to make it so that there's a certain level of per capita public spending in every province, like there's a minimum amount, because Alberta has like $11,000-$12,000 per person per capita like public service spending. It's somewhere around that. It's quite good in Alberta because we produce a lot. You then, when you pay money to the federal government, a lot of what the federal government does is just gives money out to run public services in other provinces. They give top-ups to the provinces who don't have enough per capita spending based on the arbitrary measure that it should be around like $9,000 per capita. So that means the Maritimes, the Territories, Quebec, Manitoba, it depends with Manitoba and Ontario and like British Columbia and Saskatchewan. Sometimes there have provinces, sometimes there have not provinces and get top-ups. Alberta basically is always a have province, so they're always giving other people top-ups. The whole idea is that when you give money to the government of Canada, disproportionately, the other provinces who do not perform very well economically get a disproportionate amount of federal transfers for social service spending. And the problem is that it incentivizes provinces to never fix themselves, to never help their own economies grow properly. Because, well, if the economy actually starts taking off, we might have some of the federal dollars clawed back, because if we actually lower our own taxes and we actually, do better social spending ourselves, well, maybe the government's not going to start sending us another $1,500 per person in our province because we're actually self-sustaining. It's a welfare trap, and it's a welfare trap that Alberta is paying for, so it actually sucks for everybody. So this guy, I was around the boards for 10 years, so I know quite a bit about this. And then he puts out some like misnomer point that nobody makes and like debunks a straw man. Like, dude, get out of here. Everyone knows what the actual problem is, and you're not vocalizing it. You're not actually engaging honestly with what people have a problem with. But now I just want to jump around this episode to show you whenever Laura is talking, it's always the same thing.
Relaxed than last week, and I'm glad you got some sun.
This is the intro. I'm going to get to this non-intro stuff.
What we're in the past, people will go
Baptist home that much closer to Christo-fascism than I hated it. I have never seen a leader of the opposition denigrate the country in trying to take cheap shots at the leaders to become part of their country, that flirt on media about mostly people.
Really?
Running again is sickening on its face. I mean, we were laughing about it last night, honestly. But it's not a distraction. This crime narrative is not a distraction. I think our sovereignty every time she opens her mouth.
Well, I mean, Smith...
something deeper and more mournful, right? So you know what? Is the world going to blow up? I don't know, but I think that we are in a world war. I think maybe even the new Pope might have said that. I don't want to misquote him. Their social media with praise. You make sure that the good guys are getting the wind behind their back, that they need to do this. How do we fight back?
This is literally the whole episode. I'm not cutting her out of context. I am cutting to random points in the episode, and she's like, World War III. We need to be getting into war mode, and we need to be online. We need to be supporting people. Every time she opens her mouth, the sovereignty of the country starts degrading further and further. It's like, get some lithium. Get some lithium. Like, legitimately, that's not even me trying to be snarky. Okay, it's mostly me trying to be snarky. But my point is that, like, goodness, you actually need to log off the internet if this is your emotional control when talking about Canadian politics. Things in this country are quite bad, especially from a conservative perspective. Things are not going in the right direction. I also, in my Bill Cosby dad sweater, can remain calm. Because guess what? I'm an adult. These people are not adults. The other two guys are able to kind of hold it together a little bit more. But like, goodness, these people own their own homes. They live in nice neighborhoods because they have a lot of money at their disposal and they can sit around nattering about nothing on a podcast. And they still act like everything is the worst it's ever been, except for all the things they want to praise the liberals for. But in terms of like the state of the world and right-wing politics coming to get them, it's like, you guys need a hobby. Goodness, like, just do anything. Go golfing. Just go golfing. Although I don't think we should give Laura heavy metal objects to swing around. That might be a bad idea. But I am amazed that she comes back every single few days and she puts out another show. The scary thing is some people actually watch this crap. Like, I am terrified. It's not good numbers, but the fact that she's getting over 4,000 views for some of this stuff is a little bit scary. And I was kind of disappointed. I saw Spencer Fernando did an episode with her, and I understand that he doesn't like a lot of members of the right who end up reflexively being like, Carney and Trudeau are really left-wing and cringe and they support Ukraine, ergo I support Russia. It's still pretty rare to find people like that, but like, just because some people on the right do that, don't go on to Laura Babcock's show, the lady who can't find Ukraine on a map until 2022. She only cares about Ukraine because she's supposed to care about it. Did she care back in 2014? No. Did she care about Georgia being invaded 2008? No. She probably blamed that on George W. Bush for no reason, because she is a left-wing hack. But anyways, with that being said, that should be it for this video, guys. It kind of turned into a multi-topic episode, but hopefully you like this sort of thing. Anyways, well, if you like the video, make sure to leave a like on it. Subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber. Leave a comment. And of course, if you live in the city of Calgary, make sure to get a sign for Sonia Sharp. Again, I will be doing a video breaking down the Calgary mayoral polling and why I think she is the most effective candidate to win. If you're thinking, well, Jeremy Farkas could beat Jody Gondek, I think we can shoot a little bit better than like only 10% better than Gondek. It's so weird seeing the transformation of Jeremy Farkas. He went on some spirit journey from the Mexican border all the way up, walking to Canada, hiking. I think he raised a bunch of money for Canada, the Boys and Girls Club of Canada. Good job. Also, he's just a left-wing hack now who believes in big spending programs and promising grab bag style politics to everyone. Oh, you want something? I'll give it to you if you elect me. It's like he wants to be elected so badly. He is trying to turn himself into Nenshi. And he was even running a podcast with Nenshi at one point, or at least they were always both duo guests on a specific show. It was embarrassing. But he still kind of walks around like he's old Jeremy, which I find so hacky. Nothing's changed other than the fact that he has completely changed his electoral coalition and his entire platform, because he wants the lefty backing for the election, but also trick all the old people on the right who voted for him last time. Anyways, so that should be it for this video, guys. I will see you guys later.